Hello, everyone, and welcome. My name is Todd Fernandez with Climate Crisis Policy, and I'll be your host today. We have a very exciting agenda and moment in time. I am, as you probably saw from my email today and from others, there's a clear push on right now for a clean energy, renewable electricity standard that's coming all the way from the White House, and their spokesperson said they intend to put it in law. So this is extremely exciting. This is a very momentous occasion for the history of this movement and the future of our planet. If we are able to ensconce something like this in law in the American Jobs Act, it will truly, I think, be a turning point. I don't think the importance of this can be overly stated. This is really an all-in, full-court press moment. So I'm urging everybody to drop everything else you're doing, or at least 50% of everything else you're doing, and focus on this. This is 70 to 80% of the pollution solution. It will, set the market demand in motion and enable financing to actually build renewables at scale. This is structural and fundamental, and a huge win, could be a huge win. We'll hear today from Sam Krasnow from NRDC, who's helping to lead the Clean Energy Standard Coalition with Chesapeake Climate Action Network, give you an idea of what's going on there. Then we're going to go over our climate bill package and adopted district and the Earth Bill, next plans for all that organizing. What's really remarkable is that this idea of a renewable electricity standard is the first demand in the Earth Bill. I thought it was going to be a longer road, and I feel there's a certain possibility here that I just didn't even know a few days ago was there, frankly, even though we were talking to different groups. U.S. Climate Action Network that we're part of, and is meeting again Monday to talk about how to push collectively on this, and we're deep in that conversation as well. Of course, there's still various initiatives to figure out what the standard should be. And there, hopefully we'll hear a little bit more about that from Sam, and we can talk a little bit more about that later. But as you saw from the press release, the White House has, I think, is moving to more aggressive goals and targets. And so this is an exciting moment. And I just want to emphasize the importance of focus. I mean, the biggest issue with this climate movement is that there's 1,000 topics and it's extremely complicated. And that makes it very difficult to have results and impact. When you have 1 million people working on 2 million things, if you have 1 million people working on 1 or 2 things, you can have collective impact. You can have outcomes and results. So I'll be repeating this refrain regularly from now. In May and June is the window. By July 4th, the House plans to have that bill written and done and voted on. So 2 months of our lives could change the trajectory for all of humanity. I'm seeing that my internet is unstable, so I'll just say 2 months of our lives could change the trajectory for all of humanity in the future of our planet. So all of you on this list, you have 1 million contacts. You do. We got to get them all to pivot, and we have to sound the trumpet and say, this is the call to action that we've been waiting for. And so I just urge all of you to try to make that pivot. Our ability to pivot and work together and speak as one will determine our success. We're not alone, fortunately. If we were, I wouldn't be so optimistic. But they can't be alone either, the groups and the Biden administration. They are hearing from, now that this is getting real, the fossil fuel industry is redoubling its efforts in Congress. We're being told through U.S. Climate Action Network that the Congress people are hearing from the opposition, fossil fuel interests, and not hearing from the climate community. So this is a very serious issue. But obviously we can't have this be a one-way push. And I've always said that the fossil fuel movement didn't really need to fight because they control the status quo, which is just the way they like it. Now there's a crack in that. So they are going to rise up and fight much harder than they ever fought before. And so we must also rise up like this. And we have to have the back of the people who are trying to do the right thing. And then we even have to push the people who don't want to do the right thing so they feel the pressure, and maybe that tones them down a little bit. All right, so without further ado, first up we have Keith Slack from Earth Rights. Keith, are you there and with us? And Christine, if you could highlight.
I'm
Keith.
here.
Oh, wonderful. Keith Slack is with Earth Rights, an incredible organization working on all sorts of things internationally to protect communities and the environment. And he's going to tell us, we had a great, exciting conversation about what they know and are doing and how that works, plays into our efforts. And so welcome, Keith. It's great to see you again. And please take it away.
Thanks, Todd. And I'm going to share my screen if that works. Give you a little bit of a...
Give you that permission. Christine, can you give him that permission? I'm most excited about a few things. Every time when I talk to Keith, I was excited about a lot of different things, but the rights of nature I'm fascinated by, and the move to protect defenders. Mm-hmm.
Todd, I'm sorry, it's not allowing me to grant him co-host, so could you do that please as the host?
I have to find Keith first. Greg's not with us today, as you can probably tell.
Under participants.
Participants. I don't see participants.
Under participants, there's a search at the top. You could just type in his name and it'll pull him right up.
I did, and I can't see down because my screen has these
sorry, I can't do it from here.
I don't know how to do this exactly.
He's near the top of the participants because his mic is open.
I know,
but that moves him up to the top of the participants list.
Close. Let me just open
Keith, try now. I just did multi-pin. I don't know if that's going to help us, but if you could try now, see what happens.
It says host disabled participant screen.
Oh, here you go. Here you go. I got
okay, here he goes.
Make co-host.
Co-host.
There you go. Now that should open the magic.
Oh yeah,
controls.
Great. Okay. All right. All right, can you guys all see that? Okay.
Great.
Great. Okay. Well, thanks, Todd, and thanks everybody for the chance to be here. It's great to have a chance to talk with you all. So my name's Keith Slack, and I'm Director of Strategy and Campaigns at Earth Rights International. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Earth Rights, but we are a organization that sort of works at the intersection of human rights and the environment, and work on a number of things that are climate related that I think connect to the work of this coalition. I think, and I sort of want to build on the point that Todd was making about how, the fossil fuel companies are doubling down now, and they know that this is the end game, and they're going to fight as hard as they possibly can to keep going. And that means there is going to be more pressure on activists who are on the front lines resisting fossil fuel projects. And that's one of the areas that we organizationally are working on, and thinking about different ways that we can approach this to support activists who are increasing the pressure from the bottom up to basically cut off access for new deposits, new projects for fossil fuel companies. So at Earth Rights, we have kind of three functional areas that we work in, which we refer to as our TLC model: training, legal, and campaigns. So we actually do litigate cases against corporations and fossil fuel companies. So we're participating in one of the climate lawsuits, one of the many that's going on right now. This one is in Boulder, Colorado. So we're representing the city of Boulder vis-a-vis ExxonMobil and Suncorp, and seeking to get compensation for the damage those companies have done to the environment in that area. And that's part of our overall climate work and our legal work we do as an organization. So we have three broad areas we work in. One is climate justice, one is environmental defenders. So again, the people who are on the front lines of defending the environment and working to protect the climate. Increasingly, they're being referred to as climate defenders, people who are, opposing fossil fuels and really forcing the issue in terms of resistance. And then corporate accountability, which links in a lot of the stuff that we've done in terms of human rights violations related to corporations. Okay. So in terms of where we work in the Mekong region. Until recently, we were working actively in Myanmar, but since the coup, that has we're reevaluating where we're working, but also in Thailand, Cambodia, Vietnam, and Laos. Southeast Asia is one of the largest concentrations of coal activity, coal-fired power plants, coal mining. And so we're supporting activists and organizations in that region to resist coal projects. In the Amazon region, we work with indigenous communities who are resisting fossil fuels entering into rainforest areas in the Amazon, in Peru, Colombia, and Brazil. We work to some extent in the US. I mentioned our Colorado case, but also we do a lot of US legislative work that relates to these issues. And we're also starting to look potentially working in the Congo basin based on requests for support that we've had from organizations there. Some of the things, just to give you some idea. So one of the things that we do to try to support frontline climate communities is fighting what's called a criminalization of protests. This will be familiar to many of you. Fighting against lawsuits that are brought against activists who are opposing fossil fuel projects, so so-called SLAP suits, strategic lawsuits against public participation. We're part of the Protect the Protest Coalition, which some of your organizations are a part of, which supports organizations who are resisting these kinds of suits that are designed to silence and stop activists from taking action to protest pipelines and other actions against fossil fuels. We're seeing increasing militarization of the response to protests against fossil fuels. So use of police and military forces to repress activists. And this is happening in the US, but also globally as well, of course. We work also to provide training. So we have a training center in Thailand that works with climate activists, particularly coal activists, to help provide them the skills and information and sort of advocacy techniques that are useful for them to support their work. Increasingly, these are relating questions of cyber and physical security as attacks against activists become more sophisticated and increasingly focused on online spaces. We try and create safe spaces for convenings, global solidarity networks as well. One of the things that we're concerned about organizationally, and I know a number of your organizations are working on this too, is in the name of post-COVID recovery, the risk of rollbacks of community protection laws and regulations in order to speed up the development of projects to get economies back on track. We've seen this happening in a number of countries where regulations relating to community participation, consultation have been weakened as a way to try to increase the speed with which projects can get approved. And obviously this is particularly concerning. It's something that we're following closely in various places. And then we think that keeping the pressure on fossil fuel companies is critically important at the same time that we're trying to support community activists at the local level, really trying to amplify community voices, but needing to push, keep the push going on fossil fuel companies in various ways, pushing for accountability for the climate damage they've caused, ending financing for fossil fuels, and increasingly looking at questions of climate risk disclosure to the extent to which companies are actually accurately disclosing the risk of their projects to the climate. So that's something now that is in discussion at the Security Exchange Commission. Wanted to flag one thing that's interesting. Many of you have probably heard of this. Some people haven't actually, but there is a bill that was reintroduced last week by Senator Markey from Massachusetts and Representative Escobar from Texas, which is called the Targeting Environmental and Climate Recklessness Act, or TECRA. And what it proposes to do is put sanctions on individuals and companies who commit or finance the most destructive climate action, which includes construction of subcritical coal-fired power plants, enabling or participating in illegal deforestation through illegal mining, illegal timber, or other kinds of illegal activities, and also intentionally misrepresenting the climate damages or climate impact of a project in an environmental impact assessment. So these are all actions that are potentially sanctionable under this bill. And then it also applies the global Magnitsky human rights and corruption sanctions to climate damaging projects and abuses of environmental defenders. So sort of expanding the definition of what's covered under global Magnitsky to include corruption that's related to climate damage, and also human rights abuse related to activists and environmental defenders who are trying to protect the climate in various ways. So it's an interesting concept. I'm not sure, what the real legislative prospects of this going forward are. But it could be something interesting to discuss in terms of incorporating elements into a broader climate bill. That's certainly an interesting approach, and one that is quite innovative in some ways. And then finally, on the rights of nature, Todd was asking about this. And again, I know many of you are familiar with this concept, but basically, there's a growing movement to recognize the rights of nature. So recognize the rights of ecosystems and species as equivalent to the rights and part of equivalent to rights of human beings, but also part of a broader cosmovision of nature, and how all of the elements fit into it as part of life overall. So in this sort of concept of the rights of nature, human interests are not prioritized over other species and ecosystem, but they're part of an overall common vision. And this really reflects an indigenous people's view of the way that different elements of life act harmoniously together. And what this in practical effect would do is strengthen the protections that exist for nature, not just as a resource to be exploited, but something that actually has its own inherent rights, and therefore they need to be recognized and actions taken to protect it. So we organizationally are working in Peru right now on a bill that would establish this rights of nature, and create mechanisms for ensuring that it is protected, again, as a way of creating a more harmonious sense of how life interacts with each other, and establishes sort of this kind of common vision of that, again, as natural resources, not simply for exploitation by human beings, but as part of a broader vision of harmonious, life interacting with each other. So it's an interesting, important concept that indigenous organizations are putting forward in various contexts, and in Peru is one place in particular where we're working on that. So I think that's all I had, Todd. I'm not sure if anything else that you'd like to talk.
Great. Keith is sounding very calm about all this, but this is vanguard. This is the front lines of the fight in defending the activists, and really the vanguard of legal theory. So it's very exciting. I know we talked about this on the call, so just one little quick question about liability, more staunch liability, criminal, civil liability for polluters. And I know you weren't in that zone yet, but I don't know if there's any reflection you have on this topic, and whether there could be any such kind of movement to, because as we all know, a lot of the lawsuits get kicked out of federal court because of standing. They're trying to squeeze these claims into other legislative frameworks, and they're not a perfect fit. So the answer to that is write a law that's the perfect fit. And so that's what I'm lobbying for. I'm lobbying the groups, of course, and our guests, which is not really polite, is it really? But so I'm wondering, Keith, if you have any thoughts about the possibilities there.
Yeah, I mean, I would defer this to our climate litigators, probably, Todd. But I think one of the concerns that we would have organizationally is that climate legislation not provide sort of immunity from liability in exchange for something else. You know, and I think that's, you know, there are various iterations of that have been proposed. So there has to be a way to hold the polluters and the people that have done the damage to the climate accountable at the same time that, you know, we are trying to find a way to move forward and really, you know, get a collaborative approach to reducing emissions and addressing the climate crisis that we're in. So that's really the extent of what I could say at the moment. I mean, there's the pressure on the fossil fuel companies is intensifying because of the accumulation of lawsuits, you know, over the past few years, and that's growing. And every day it seems like there's a new one that's filed. And then hopefully that becomes, you know, those are the real vehicles for accountability and you know, receiving some compensation for the damage that's been caused.
Mm-hmm. And then just one last question. Do you think we could get the Peru language and translate it into English and add a earth, you know, rights of nature to our comprehensive bill?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I'm happy to do that. It's interesting. It's starting to get incorporated into some of the legislation in South America. So it's in the Ecuador Constitution, rights of nature. That'd be something else we could potentially share, but happy to share that other info.
Wonderful. All right. Well, I'll let you go with that. I'm glad that you're very glad that you guys are on the front lines of this. We're talking already about domestic police intimidation as well. And in New York, we were arrested and kept in handcuffs for 3 hours after the New York Times protest. And 3 hours in handcuffs with your arms behind your back is a form of torture, in my opinion. So fortunately, the Attorney General, Letitia James, has filed a lawsuit against the NYPD for their various practices that disrupt the right to protest, which are systematic and calculated. So different people are working on this, but it's very important because even with the progress pending, perhaps, and there's a great deal more to do, and it's going to get worse before it gets better. So protest is going to be extremely important. And I would say it already is. And protecting our right to do that safely and without police attacking us is sort of critical to our, you know, ability to you know, function as a democracy. So
absolutely.
Yeah. All right, great. Well, Keith, thank you so much.
Sure.
And we'll stay in touch. I'd love your input on the draft language. We're trying to, you know, that I sent you. So
great.
Well, thank you so much for everything.
All right. Thanks. Next time. See ya.
Bye-bye. Next up, we have Sam Krasnow from NRDC. I just was very excited to find Chesapeake Climate Action Network and NRDC and a host of others working on a clean energy standard. And so we've joined that team and we're going to those meetings and they have a full court press going, but I'll let Sam tell you about it. Sam, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us. Christine, if you could spotlight.
Thank you very much. Can you guys see me?
Not yet. We can hear you though.
Okay, I'll keep talking, see if my video pops up.
There you are.
All right, great. So I also have a colleague of mine from NRDC. We're gonna kind of share the presenting duties and discussion Q&A. Arjun Krishnaswamy is our lead on climate policy and an analyst who helps us figure out exactly how these policies will translate to the good benefits we want from pollution reduction and greenhouse gases. I am on the federal policy team, and I've worked in the power sector for many years, including in the Northeast, partnering with a lot of grassroots groups. At the time, it was Environment Northeast. Now it's Acadia Center. And what we're trying to do here is set up a group is growing as fast as possible to pressure policymakers to make the most of this next few months, where we have a chance to pass some really important clean energy legislation, most likely through reconciliation. But I'll actually turn it over to Arjun, who is going to kind of do the first half of the summary, and then I can do the second half.
Thanks, Sam, and thanks, Todd, and the rest of the group for inviting us to come share. We're very excited about the momentum that's building around the Clean Electricity Standard, work at the federal level, and I'll walk through maybe a refresher for many of you of why a clean electricity standard, or a CES, what it is and why it's so important for our addressing the climate crisis, and then turn it back to Sam to talk more about the groups that are involved and where we are in our campaigning, and how, if any of you are interested, you can be involved in some of the work we're doing. So just to start off, a clean electricity standard, or a CES, is a key component of addressing the climate crisis through federal policy. We know that the power sector and cleaning up the power sector is key if we're to reduce emissions at the scale that we need to address the climate crisis. And if you look at how much the electricity system can do, if we get to 100% clean electricity in the power sector, and we combine that with measures to replace fossil fuels in transportation and buildings and industry with electricity, then we can eliminate 75% of today's carbon pollution. And at the center of that is addressing the power sector, building out clean electricity. And a clean electricity standard is one way of doing that. There are other ways of addressing the power sector, and many groups have worked on various different ways of doing so. But a clean electricity standard is, as a refresher, is a requirement on electric utilities to get an increasing share of their electricity that they supply to customers from clean resources, and in turn to reduce the amount of electricity that they get from polluting resources, from fossil fuels. And a CES, the reason why we're focusing on a CES is because it's gained a lot of traction in recent years. 31 states have a clean electricity standard or renewable portfolio standard in place. 1 in 3 Americans live in a state that is aiming toward 100% clean electricity at various dates. And because that's the result of broad coalitions, including, I'm sure, many of the folks on the phone, fighting at the state level for these sorts of policies. And as a result of those great state examples and lots of organizing and movement work that's been done, we saw a clean electricity standard, or CES, come to the forefront of the conversation about climate policy within the Democratic primary last year. And again, as a result of all that work, a CES ended up at the center of Biden's campaign plan on climate, and in turn ended up as a core piece of his economic recovery plan. And there's good reason for that. The target that he set out, 100% clean by 2035, or 80% clean by 2030, on the path to 2035, would help meet both the climate and pollution reduction goals, and also the economic recovery goals. A 80% clean by 2030 standard would achieve about half of President Biden's recently announced emissions target for 2030. And it also, getting to 100% clean power would virtually eliminate locally harmful air pollution, as well as require the build out of clean energy at a pace that's unprecedented, and in turn create millions of jobs in every region of the country if we design a clean electricity standard to require every utility to make progress. So we know, and the groups we're working with know that this is a key part of success through an economic recovery or an infrastructure package or a climate plan at the federal level. And then the question is, how do we get this passed? What can we do? What are the vehicles through which we can get this passed? With the slim margins in the Senate, we probably cannot pass a strong clean electricity standard through the regular legislative process. So one option is of course, if the filibuster is eliminated, then a clean electricity standard could pass through the legislative process with many of the other bills that we know we need to pass that currently are held up by the filibuster. But if the filibuster remains in place, then we can still pass a clean electricity standard through the budget reconciliation process. And we have the groups that we've been working with and that Todd has joined the conversations with are focused on thinking about how can we design a clean electricity standard to fit within the budget reconciliation rules of the Senate, and to do so in a way where we make a really big federal investment in protecting customers from electricity bill increases, building out clean energy at the pace we need, and creating a requirement through the federal budget to actually achieve our electricity sector goals. And we've been thinking about different approaches to doing so, and what the legislative strategy is to get there. And all of that is in flux. But the groups that we're working with are organizing around budget reconciliation as the path forward. And I think with that, I'll pass it to Sam to talk more about the groups that we're working with and how we've gotten them engaged.
Wonderful.
Great, thanks all. And thanks, Arjun. That was a really great whirlwind tour through where things are right now. And really, the reason why we're getting a lot of traction from folks in the White House, folks on the Hill, is because of the grassroots and growing call for action now on making sure we get more of the resources we need into the grid and reduce fossil fuels and co-pollutants immediately, and demand a ton of action through policies passed now by 2030 on our way to 2035. So the coalition includes lots of grassroots groups around the country, some of the large so-called green groups, of which NRDC is one, Sierra Club, UCS, EDF, LCV, lots of regional organizations. I previously spent a big chunk of my career, about a decade, working at the state, local level, and a lot of those regional organizations and networks have joined this call, as well as Sunrise, youth movement folks, EJ advocates, clean energy companies. It's really a growing chorus saying this is our moment and we can't let it slip. In terms of ways to get involved, I'm about to hit send on a chat here to the group. There's a form, a Google Doc form, to sign a letter that the coalition has been working on. We got over 150 groups so far, but I think it's just going to grow, and hopefully with your help, grow exponentially. You can read the letter when you have a moment, but it's really calling on the president and Congress to take action now, and to say that this is a great opportunity to help all communities, and particularly communities who have predominantly borne the brunt of pollution, communities of color. We have an opportunity to make this a really winning strategy on the jobs and economic development front.
That too.
And then I'd say just finally wrapping up, because I want to leave time for Q&A. And if you're not talking, you can go on mute. That'd be great. A little background noise.
If you could fix.
The opportunity really is to take this sign-on letter and coalition and do a bunch of outreach that has been occurring already and will continue to occur, and we need to ramp it up. So outreach to Hill contacts, to folks who represent you all and represent community groups that you work with. We need every vote we can get. We need to be loud and noisy. There's lots of priorities and lots of good priorities, but this needs to stay among the top tier of priorities, because there's a lot of pressure for reconciliation consideration and for budgets. And we have some Democrats who are completely with us with the vision and the transition and the pace and the scale of the problem. And we need to encourage them to take and continue leadership roles. And then we have some Democrats who are needing to be bolstered and needed to be reminded that this is what it means to be a leader, even if you're in a hard state as a Democrat. So whether that's Senator Casey from Pennsylvania, or Hickenlooper from Colorado, Manchin, Sinema, Tester, there's probably 6, 7, 8 Democratic senators who need our encouragement the most, and know that we will support aggressive action and be there for them, both holding them accountable and supporting them when they do the right thing. And then also, of course, on the House side, the margins are thin as well. I think leadership is largely with us. I think it's embedded, the climate crisis is embedded in their consciousnness, but there's a lot of kind of middle district Democrats who make up the majority, and they need our support and they need to hear from us often. So I'll stop there and hope that was a good kind of 1-2 combination overview of what we've been working on, and really want to ask for your help in making this possible. Thanks.
Great, Sam and Arjun, thank you both so much. So obviously the definition is going to be important to a lot of folks, and particularly our community, and we know that that's in the works. There are different groups within the coalition working on different approaches, and then enforcement is a very important piece. And I know this is all being worked out, so I already told you in the email I wasn't going to put you on the spot on any of these things, but is there anything you want to say about those two topics? I think our approach is going to be to push for this definition that we came up with as a group. So I think it's fine that everybody have different, angles a little bit on this as we go into it, as long as we're all pushing in the same direction, because obviously the sausage makers are going to decide the final thing. But there are a few different camps on this, and without, whatever you feel comfortable at this stage, and we can always come back in a little bit later when this is further development. Is there anything you could say about that journey of this definitions and then enforcement approaches?
Sure. Sam, I'm happy to start and then turn it over to you to add anything. So this is obviously I've been following the conversation in the chat, the good conversation in the chat about nuclear in particular. I mean, this is obviously one of the stickiest topics in designing a standard or designing federal power sector policy, and I think we see this regardless of what tool we're talking about. How do you determine which resources qualify for different incentives or standards? And it's something that within the broader set of groups that we're working with, there's disagreement, and we're working through it, as Todd mentioned, and working through it both to find something that our groups can agree upon, while also recognizing that in the end, there's going to be we're not the ones who are going to decide what makes it in. We can take our stand and draw our lines and support what we support, but ultimately, the senators, and a few senators in particular, will have a lot of power over what qualifies and what doesn't. With all of that being said, the way we're thinking about it is in really, thinking about, I think we can kind of segment it into existing resources and new resources. And I think there's quite a bit of conversation in the chat about existing nuclear and how to deal with it, and what and I think there was mention of Indian Point, and one of the goals that we want to make sure is met by this, is by any sort of standard that passes, is that when nuclear plants retire, they are replaced with new renewables that are in addition to the amount of renewables that we need to add to the system to get on track for 100% clean electricity, and to address this problem where when some plants retire, and if nuclear plants continue to retire, then in business as usual, they're likely to be replaced with gas plants, and we don't want to lock in that infrastructure. We also, NRDC is committed to addressing the safety and waste issues with many of our existing nuclear power plants. And we're thinking about how to hold those two things in balance, both sort of getting on track for 100% clean system, replacing any retiring nuclear power plants with new renewables, and addressing these serious issues with many existing plants. And then on the new resources front, all of our, I think actually this is one thing that many of our groups are in alignment on, is that any standard on the power sector should emphasize and result in build out of new wind and solar pretty much exclusively. That should be the goal, is we're talking about building out new wind and solar. And that, then the question is, are those the only things that qualify? if other resources qualify, there's some disagreement, I think, about whether that means that they will actually get built on the timelines we're talking about. If you're aiming for 100% in the next 15 years, it's very unlikely that we'll see any advanced nuclear or a real build out of carbon capture in the power sector. And so then the question is, how do we deal with that issue? If those are important to get votes, but they won't get built, where do we draw the line? And those are really active conversations that we're thinking about. And I see a comment about geothermal. That's right. We're, thinking about geothermal as well. The phrase we're using is non-combustion renewable energy. So acknowledging that we also need to address the potential impacts of biomass and waste incineration. Sam, do you want to add anything to that?
That sounds great too. And Sam, go ahead, of course. But then if you could also include stuff about the enforcement concepts.
Yeah. So on the enforcement side, we certainly believe that there needs to be a very strong stick to ensure that the vision of incentivizing new build out of renewables of all stripes, non-combustion renewables of all stripes, actually happens. And so there's a carrot part and a stick part, or enforcement mechanisms. And those are in discussion. We certainly think there needs to be a healthy penalty or fee or other mechanism that really makes it impossible for utilities to get too far afield from the extremely aggressive timeline that we've painted. So it's like, if you can get on the historically ambitious increase of renewables, there will be support from the federal government for this 10-year window. And if not, here's the fee, and this fee is going to be uncomfortable, and you're going to have to answer to consumers why you were not able to keep up, and to commissions, and give consumer advocates and environmental advocates and EJ advocates a very strong leg to stand on in public utility commissions or in front of municipal or co-op boards. So again, this is our moment. We need both sides. We need a carrot to help those trying to do the right thing, but we need a stick to hold them accountable.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, guys, I don't know. To me, this feels like history in the making. And I could feel the optimism in the coalition, and then Biden just came out with an announcement 2 days ago, 80% by 2030. And the spokesperson was saying they want it in law, which is really what matters. So this is great. We're going to go on with our meeting, but I just would encourage the coalition, and I'm going to be talking to U.S. Climate Action Network about this too on Monday. It would be helpful if we had a communications team that sort of straddled this. I know you have one and you have some materials, but some forward-facing materials that we can use to rally the activists and get the activists excited, and some mass emails from all of our groups rallying people to action. We're looking at a July 2nd for Pollution Independence Day event, but that's after the House bill is already planned to be done. So we're going to be meeting every Monday night and planning our outreach to groups and to Congress. We have about 94 congressional districts already adopted with leads in those communities, already setting up meetings on our bill package. I say our bill package, but it's really the community's bills. And so we're ready to go all in, I think. And we're gonna be talking about that some more. So anything we can do to get some materials to get the word out there. I would love if everybody's emails were going out with a similar message about this. And then maybe we could also talk about some moments in May and June for collective pushes just to rally the troops. Wonderful.
That sounds great. Thank you for the opportunity, and thanks for your support. And we're going to make this happen together.
All right, Sam. Thank you both so much. Thank you, Arjun. Any last comment, Arjun?
Nope. Thanks so much for having us. And feel free to reach out to either of us if you have more questions or want to talk. We're here.
All right, wonderful.
All right, take care.
Thank you both so much. All right, everybody. Can you feel it? Can you feel that something's happening right now? Let's see here. It's 12:48. I was going to play a video today, and I don't normally do something like this, But I think let's just watch this video for a second together, and then we're going to dive into all the organizing that we're doing. Oh, you got to make me host again, Christine, if you could. It's so weird how this works. Co-host should be able to, oh, maybe I made you host and not myself. So you just make me co-host is fine. There was a video during the presidential summit with David Attenborough headlined, and it was terrifying, and it was a perfect video. And I can't find that video. But in that video, this person was, oh, shoot, let me fix this one more time. In that video, this person was featured. I'll show you. We're gonna watch the video together. I want to make sure everyone sees it. So as you can see, we're not making this up. I don't want to just have everyone go into despair, but I live in that sort of despair every day, which keeps me going in this project. And this segues into our next steps together. I have to go find the agenda. So it just is intended to give you the idea of how critical it is that we really zero in and focus together. So I'm going to give you a few things. First, we're going to just updates on a lot of stuff from now on. So the first thing is to find your rep. We're going to do this together. Your rep, let's try to do this together. I've never tried to do anything. Find your rep, send this email. We're going to see if I can pull this off and we'll do it together. But this will take you to your rep. And I thought we would just do some action today to get the ball rolling. If you click on that and find your rep by your zip code, you need your 4 numbers, and I'll keep talking while you're doing this. And then there's a draft email for you to send. But while you're working on all of that, I'll keep talking. Some updates. Adopted District is going great. We have 146 folks in that effort, 29 youth, 45 faith, and 89 districts in 28 states. We have 75 Democrats, 14 Republicans districts. And then we're now in states with 16 Republicans and 39 Democrats and 1 independent. I don't know who that is. Does anyone know who that 1 independent is? Mr. Bernie Sanders, obviously. Who's done so much to lead so much. Anyhow, these are pretty good numbers for our small little group, but we need help there. The link to Adopt Your District is always available everywhere. The 21 climate bill package is great, in great shape. And then we have new bills to add. And those are linked in the email I sent you. I'm not going to go into those in detail today, but on the next big call like this, we will really finalize that. I should maybe just, let me just turn this on for a second and we could look at it. We have time. Let's just look. Anyway, I don't know that we need to get too much into the weeds there, but we have some very exciting bills in that pipeline. It's not opening very quick. We have the International Forest Bill. We have the banning of fossil fuel bank financing. We have the Racial Justice in Farming, the Black Farmers Act. We have prohibitions on utility steam, fracking, and export bans. Export bans are extremely important. That's in the Future Generations Protection Act and the Ban All New Oil Exports Act. Most of the pipelines and all the stuff, you know the drill, is going out of the country. So we're, and then more transition and just transition and energy manufacturing jobs to help the transitioning communities. So those are exciting. Obviously, want to add those. I put it in the link to those is on the email that went out today. Let's see here. So adding bills obviously to a package of 9 already is no easy feat. So it'll be about 14 or 15 bills. I just want to touch base briefly on the strategy and context of these bills. the idea behind identifying climate bill package was always to sort of as a set of training wheels to get us to understand that this needs to be cross-sectional. And it was always emanated from the idea that we don't have enough power in any individual topic alone. So we have to join forces for political power. And so these were training wheels to get us understanding specifics, getting us into federal legislation. It was never the end game. And some of the bills are fabulous. Some of them are very, are all voluntary. So they don't really move the dial on certain things. And obviously with legislation, it's the leadership is going to decide what's going to move. So our bills, these bills are not necessarily going to be what moves. Some of them have close to 100 sponsors, but most of them are much lower. So the Earth Bill is an addition to that excerpts out the mandates and for electricity, cars, and food. Electricity, cars, and food. Oh my. Electricity, cars, and food. Oh my. I always think of the Wizard of Oz, obviously. Lions and tigers and bears. So those three sectors and mandates on that on a date certain are not in any other legislation that we have in our package or that we have proposed. But it dovetails beautifully with all the various coalition efforts, including VICA, which is U.S. Climate Action Network, and the Thrive Act, which you're hearing a lot about now, and the Green New Deal resolution. The Green New Deal resolution has been refiled. It's not a mandates bill, it's a resolution. The Thrive agenda is a sort of a budget bill. Like if we had $1 trillion, we'll set up this group that will decide how that money gets spent, and we will spend it on these kinds of projects that meet these criteria. And they do have the emission standards in those criteria, but they are not mandates on the polluting industries themselves. So these things complement each other. They all work together. There's no conflict between these visions. And so I'm getting a couple questions here about how this all goes together. And that's the answer. We've excerpted out the mandates, 3 industries, and those mandates are critical because they unleash the power of the private sector to meet the building requirements to actually effectuate this transition. What's very unique in our, very unique, I used to make fun of people who use that phrase, in the Earth Bill is the focus on big ag. And that definition, which really captures the big players who control the farmers by contract, and their feed and their pesticide and fertilizer uses are mandated. So folks didn't want to put the imposition on the farmers who really don't have the control because they're under the contractual control of big ag. And so that's new, but the idea of switching to regenerative agriculture, of course, is not. So these ideas are part and parcel of everyone's ideas. The Earth Bill is just a packaging really of these mandates. And so you can work with the Earth Bill, you can work without the Earth Bill language. Everything I need is a brand. You got to have a brand to be able to talk about things. And so don't feel constrained by the bill or by that framing. Take the mandates if you need to and run with those. And there's a new sign-on letter or petition that's being, that's finished really. And so that'll be available soon for groups who you don't think might want to take the pledge for the bill, Earth Bill, but might still want to support the idea. And that idea is more important than anything. And in the email that we have there drafted, I put in the chat for folks to send today, it basically says this kinds of things. It explains how the ideas need to be put in moving legislation, et cetera. So that's the context of those things. One other note, the policy sectors are hard at work. They finished these definitions by and large, and there's some ongoing conversations about that. There's a proposal to add ranching or livestock management provisions that really, pin that down a little bit better. And just some other things in flux, but we have time obviously to change or add to that over time. The teams are working on fact sheets. So the health, electricity, ag, and we don't really have a transportation team, but we have some people in it, are working on fact sheets to show exactly how the Earth Bill will impact everything, how 100% renewable energy is going to be a fabulous thing on X, Y, and Z reasons. So those are in the works. We could use some help with that. So if anyone has, desktop publishing skills and writing skills, and you'd like to jump in, we're gathering the raw materials, but it really needs some some expert writers to dig in, summarize things, and come up with some drafts. The other thing that we're working on in the electricity sector is an outline of what the plan is to build 100% clean renewables or renewable electricity. And so who's going to build it? Where's it going to go? Who's going to be the general contractor at the government level to make sure it all comes together? You know, what's the transmission plan? And we're cobbling together various resources on that. And that team is sort of a heavy hitter crowd with a lot of expertise, and it's exciting. So those are those updates. The Earth Bill, as you probably can tell, we launched this. It had liftoff. It's gaining traction. There are about 20 organizations that have already endorsed. I can try to go grab those and put them in the chat in a second. We're eager for all of your groups to please endorse as fast as possible, because once we have 50 groups, we'll be in a real strong position to answer that question when we go to legislative office, who supports this. And so that's really the first step. If you took the pledge, please go after your organization and expedite. We have to expedite everything now. If you have regular meetings in 3 weeks, have an emergency meeting. It's emergency time. And supporting the Earth Bill, and if they say, well, yeah, we support the ideas, but we don't want to sign the pledge, then that's fine too. And you have the sign-on letter, and you can advocate for the clean electricity standard as a group and jump in there. Don't feel constrained. Somebody's got some background noise. We're moving around, please mute. Don't feel constrained by the Earth Bill construct. It's the elements that are critical. So, and we need organizations, not just yours, but and so different groups are looking at the pledge still, like Family Farm will endorse it, but we're working on the definition. You get the idea, it's all in play. And then this timeline needs to be reemphasized. It's the infrastructure bill. The House is going to finish by the end of June. So we have an historic window here. We've decided, every time I start to say this, I hesitate because not only am I tired, but I'm pushing y'all, but I'm pushing myself too. We've decided to have regular Monday night meetings again, every Monday night at 8 o'clock. It's full court press time. So these are going to be action campaign meetings. Take the pledge to join those meetings. Plus you want to take the pledge anyway if you support it, because the new website's coming out and we're going to list everybody's names who have signed on in your state, I think, or your district. So that'll be a little historical document, always added to it, of course. But take the pledge to join the Monday night meetings, and we'll send out the link then. We'll probably send it out other ways. But this is an affinity group. And if you have ever been in direct action or other organizing circles, affinity group is a very spiritual and special place where we have made a joint commitment to each other. And we'll talk more about that in the meetings. But this is where we're going to go all in. So we're going to get serious about this. We're going to try to pull the entire Congress, 435 of them. So we'll make the list, and hopefully people will take 5 or 10. It doesn't have to be in your district. We're going to, and just say, okay, I'll tackle these 5, or if you can do 10, and we'll just divvy it up and make sure everybody gets at least 1 email and 1 phone call. We have Michelle Brandt's going to oversee outreach. There'll be a group document where we're putting all the organizations that we're trying to reach. If you've ever done march organizing for a big march, this is the same kind of construct. We're going to list all the groups. We're all going to go in. We're going to call all those groups to support the Clean Energy Standard and the Earth Bill, and just really, sound the trumpet, as I say, to let everybody know that this moment is happening. And I don't think people know that. So this is a very important role that we can play. You guys have, networks, and there are people in the all 5. You guys have networks that would just, make anybody envious. And so if you mobilize your networks, you will be part of the result and the victory that's coming. So Michelle Brandt's going to head that up, and she's quite a sophisticated organizer, having worked on democracy processes around the globe. And each one of our policy sectors also has their own outreach plan in the works and groups that they're focusing on. We need somebody who can help with onboarding new volunteers. This is a constant issue when you organize. And so we need a team for that. And then we'd like to now a marketing team. We have our own, I would call it the marketing industry that is working on coming into this situation as a whole, but we've not really asked them to do marketing for a particular campaign. That is in part of the conversation now for the Earth Bill, but it would be great, I think, to have our own little team that does memes and pushes out messaging and things like that. All this information about the Earth Bill is on our current website, but the new website will be coming May 5th. It's in the works, earthbill.org, neutrally branded, and we'll be putting all your logos and names and et cetera on that website. Fridays for Future is going to do an action network for the Earth Bill and set that up. And that will have like it'd be divided by states so that the organizers within those states can get the emails that come from that effort and start to build your local state teams. And then the direct action team is stirring up some things and has some plans. So I'm going to check back in. I might as well just say them. Direct action. We're still working on the names, but I'm calling it Pollution Independence Day, July 2nd. For July 4th weekend, that's a Friday. The contours of that are still coming together, but there'll be online virtual ways to do it. We'll maybe have like drive-by and honk your horn at the congressperson's office, or we'll see how much energy we have going into that. If we have been successful or know we're going to be successful in getting a clean energy standard in the House version of that bill, that means it's game on for the Senate. So that July 2nd event could be quite a party. And we might switch to senator attentions instead of the House. The next faith meeting is next Wednesday, the 5th, Spring Up for Earth. And we're really trying to encourage the frontline preachers and rabbis and the whole works to step up more, start preaching from the pulpit, the climate gospel, and really mobilize their communities on this front. And that's no easy feat. But we're gonna have some performers and some good speakers. So if you know faith organizations, that's going strong, but please let them know. So I had the action now. I was going to do it with you, but obviously I probably can't talk and do it at the same time. But how many folks, maybe by show of hand, were able to find their rep and send an email, or will plan to do it after the meeting? Plan to do it? I know some people are hesitant with their hands going up. I see it. No worries. Just do it. We got to get the name. We got to get this noise going. And it's very simple. Just use the online forms that your congressperson has for this blast. And then, of course, you're going to go much deeper than this. And just a little bit of a glimpse into going deeper. I'm working now in my district, Espaillat. The adopted district team in New York is unbelievable, as you probably all know. And they have a big group already working on New York 13. And they have meetings in the works for the bill package. And then at that meeting, they will mention the Earth Bill, and then we'll set up a second meeting for that. I'm starting to work my connections to see who knows who and asking around, and that's producing some results. So there's the front door with these things, and then there's the side doors. So finding out who the fundraisers are for your congressperson, who raised the big bucks in your community. And look beyond the climate to the political arena that you all are in. Contact your Democratic club. And they're not going to work on it directly, but they might have some activists who would. And they will definitely know who knows the congressperson. Same with the Republican groups. So don't hesitate to reach out to those folks and just say, and you're fishing right now. It's a huge fishing expedition to find, to broaden our horizons and our connections. And so phone calls and the meetings that we're having are lovely, and they're critical to get the ball rolling, but those are very preliminary, surface level first steps. The real power is through the network of who knows who, and who raised the money is a great place to start, but who, where they went to school and who taught them, and, get into their lives a little bit and their staff, and, just figure out who knows who. It's that moment. We got to pull all the strings. So let's see what else. I don't know. Does the Monday night meeting work for folks? I hope it does. Maybe a little show of hands of that, or for people who are interested in that. It's all right if it's small. All right, because This is going to be a working meeting. You know, I won't be talking like this. We're going to be like, okay, who's working on this district? Who's working on that district? Who can take this one? This is game on. And it's fun. We did this for the Off Act and got 50 co-sponsors, and nobody ever dreamed they would sign on to something like this on the Off Act. 2 of the provisions in the Earth Bill were in the Off Act. So the 100 people who have already 103 on the Green New Deal resolution, they should be easy targets, but we'll see, because none of those bills have those mandates for whatever reason. And the 50 people who took the Off Act, which is most of New York, this should be an easy lift for some of them. But we're looking for the sponsors as well, not just to take the pledge. That's just a tool right now, but we're looking for the sponsors. And I would love for those sponsors to be people that no one has ever heard of. The milquetoast of Congress, who are just, you know, genuine and not headline folks, who are not galvanizing or polarizing, but then, you know, are spread around. That would be lovely. But we're not going to be too fussy. Oh, I see Felice is here. I'm so sorry, Felice. I'm going to stop talking and give Felice the last 10 minutes. So you all know what we're up to. Felice is deep into all of this. I'm so sorry, Felice. I didn't see you had arrived.
Totally fine.
I was filling up space a little bit, but not really. All right, go ahead, Felice. Welcome, Felice from EDF, who you all know from past meetings. What's the state of play, Felice? And I know EDF is drafting, is in the coalition working on the CES. What's the latest and how can we help?
Yeah, hi. It's been a busy month. And so, you know, I think one of the things I would love to think about is how I can use my short time with you every month in a way that's going to be the most valuable. And so I know I often come and try, you know, I talk really fast and I go through all of the different things that are happening, but I also know that each of you is, you know, tracking really closely all of the stuff that's unfolding here in Congress and everything that's related to climate. And so if there's a way to help funnel your questions ahead of time so that I can come to these meetings so that I can answer any questions that come up would be also a really, I think would be really valuable, because I want it to be, I'm here to be a resource. But as I said, things are moving really quickly and I want to make sure that I'm responsive. So let me kind of share with you where things stand, and I'll reference the Clean Electricity Standard, which Todd mentioned. So the groups here in Washington, and I would say, when I say it's the groups in Washington, it's the many of the groups that that I've mentioned before, plus many other organizations that have signed on to and are part of a kind of a short-term branded effort called ACT. It's like ACT Now, sort of a longer title, but it's really a coalition of organizations that's working really hard to make sure that a really bold investment package is signed by Congress, or signed by the president, gets through both chambers of Congress, that offers an expansive definition of infrastructure and can serve as a down payment to decarbonizing our transportation sector, decarbonizing our electricity sector, jumpstart US manufacturing, get people to work, and deliver critical public health and climate protections. So that's really kind of the main game in town. It's called the American Jobs Plan, is the name that the administration put on this. And every relevant committee in Washington is now working on their piece of that. So imagine the big bill that, and I think I mentioned this to you last month, the big bill that everyone's going to initially focus on is the Surface Transportation Bill. This is the bill that just like makes sure that states have money for roads and bridges. But that's not sufficient. And the American Jobs Plan reinforces that that's not sufficient. And the American Jobs Plan shows that we need a much more expansive definition of infrastructure. And that expansive definition needs to include the real, like the nuts and bolts that we need to actually support quickly decarbonizing our economy. And so I can't state enough how critically important this window is, because very rarely do we have an opportunity where we can get Congress's attention to write a really, 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 really big check to drive money to precisely the things we need to support this pivot to a decarbonized economy. And so right now we are working to make sure that we've got all of those pieces together. There is a ton of information that's being produced and being sent out to groups, to constituencies, to volunteers around the country. That as much as possible, we're all, kind of reinforcing the same important message, which is we have this one in a generation opportunity. We need to make this investment, and we need Congress to step up and to prioritize making this investment. We also need Congress to remember that infrastructure today does not just mean roads and bridges. We have a lot of crumbling infrastructure. We have a lot of infrastructure that's not set up to support clean energy. We have a lot of infrastructure that's not set up to withstand extreme weather events. We have a lot of infrastructure that's incredibly energy inefficient. So all of those pieces are really, really important, again, to get the investments in precisely those areas of the economy that will, over time, help support the pivot to a decarbonized economy and important jumpstart U.S. manufacturing, so we can also at the same time build up our workforce here in this country with good paying jobs. So
Elise, real quick, just so you know, at the top of our meeting, we had Sam Krasnow from NRDC and the Chesapeake Climate Action Network campaign for
Okay.
CES. So we really led our whole program talking about the CES and the work that's going on in that coalition to draft the standards and enforcement ideas. And he mentioned that EDF was involved in those conversations. We all know that it's in development, but if there's anything about that process that you are familiar with.
So let me share a little bit about kind of how that relates to this work around an infrastructure package. So I would say that right now there's the desire is to help make sure that we are driving investments to support increased reliance on clean energy and increased investment in clean energy. That, I would say, everybody's in agreement with that. NRDC, CCAN, every organization wants to make sure. What does that mean in practice? So we've heard about the clean energy tax incentives. These expire periodically. Let's make sure that they don't expire. Let's make sure that they're also getting extended to other components so that we make sure that we're really ramping up investments in renewables. Whether we can also simultaneously, a standard, if you say clean energy standard, clean electricity standard, standard means that there's like actually something that's an enforceable limit that says we need to get the industry or the whole sector to 100% by 2035 and 80% by 2030, whatever those pieces are. There is actually, I'm going to be really honest, there is not real clarity about whether that specificity will be able to be woven into a major infrastructure package that's about investing in new infrastructure. It's not clear. Now, you can say, is it a messaging thing? Can you say, we want to invest in, extending the tax credits. We want to invest in, jumpstarting, in building up a more modern grid that moves electricity from where it's created to the homes. Those things are all intended to help us achieve our goal of 100% clean electricity by 2035. But it's not yet clear. I'll be honest, Todd, it's not yet clear whether we can see a American Jobs Plan move through both chambers of Congress, move to the president's desk, that will also actually have an enforceable limit embedded in a that would apply to the utility sector. So probably more detail than is necessary for this group. I think the most important thing for people to recognize is that for everybody here to recognize is that as members of Congress are trying to figure out, what makes sense to include in an infrastructure package, that most critical is that they don't stop at roads and bridges. Like, that is most critical. If we sit here in September, I'm going to be honest, if we sit here in September and all we have is a bill that gets signed and it includes money for roads and bridges, we will have failed. We will have failed, because this again is such an incredible opportunity to make sure that we're getting investments in the things that are essential, honestly, in order to get us to 100% clean electricity by 2035. So again, how much it gets woven in, it might be like, this is maybe between now and September is just about investments and making sure that we're gonna get the infrastructure in place to support the move to a clean electricity standard. And maybe chapter 2, so moving like fall, winter into 22 will be a standalone bill that specifically sets an enforceable limit on the electricity sector that has a little bit more more teeth and puts a bit more pressure on the utility sector.
All right. Well, thank you again, as always, for joining us and sharing these. And our team is going to be making a full court press over the next 2 months to try to get the standards into the infrastructure bill, American Jobs Act. All right, Mayor wants a brief statement about, so we're going to make the full court press, but what Felice is giving us is a dose of reality in terms of how uphill the battle remains. And, the first half of our meeting was sort of a pep rally for this. And then it doesn't hurt to have a little medicine at the end about the truth of how hard this is. So it makes the call for action all the more poignant. And
I think Meryl, you're asking a statement. So maybe, maybe what I could do, there is a toolkit being produced by the Climate Action Campaign that's intended to provide that, some specificity. And maybe I can, Todd, if I get that to you, do you send that around to everybody here? Okay. Yeah. And then separately, there is a real, one of the things that was identified earlier this week is we need more details about what the American Jobs Plan or what an infrastructure plan means for your state or your House district. Like right now, it's kind of, it's like, it all sounds great in platitudes, but like people need specifics. And we're most weak in terms of details of what it means for rural America. And for those of us who've lived in rural America, rural is not small urban. Like rural America is actually unique. And we need to do a better job of actually articulating what that means. So the campaign, like the broader kind of, the broader campaign is working on building out more information so that when you go to a member of Congress and you can say, hey, we really need, a major investment. And we need to make sure we are investing in all things that we think, fall under the definition of infrastructure. And if they say, well, what does that mean? We can say, well, in this state, it means X. In Y state, it means Y. And so we're trying to pull those pieces together.
Wonderful. That's very important. And everybody, you all know that. You're all over the country. You know what your representatives want to hear. They want to hear, how does this affect us and our state and our constituents? So to the extent you can help, I'm sure your groups are on top of these things, but if you could just really emphasize with your teams to go back and look at that and start putting together a couple of talking points on how particularly a clean energy standard will impact your community. There's the transmission lines. We're looking at a map of the transmission lines that they're talking about, and there's a drawing of what states they go through. So you're like, all right, well, those states are going to have lots of benefits from building those transmission lines. That's a great selling point. We'll get that map out to everybody as we dig into this on Monday nights. So we just have to figure out what the local benefits are, because that's going to help sell it and get it over the top. All right, well, it's 1:30. I don't know.
I just put my email address. I know some of you have used that email address after my other visits. So I encourage others as well. And then I will I will try to be as responsive as I can. I am going on vacation next week, so if you email me next week, it's going to get buried. But please do be in touch if there's very specific, if there's specific questions you're looking for, and happy to flip over any information and resources and toolkits that are being produced. Todd, I think you're on the right listserv at this point with the Combined Defense Project. They're producing a lot of information. Climate Power, if you haven't seen what they've been putting out, Climate Power is producing a tremendous amount of information that I think could be of value, and you can get on their distribution list as well, or you can go to their website. They have a lot of information there.
All right, wonderful. Yes, we need to figure out where the one website is from the coalition efforts that have all the pieces that we need to support. If that could get on the to-do list.
Okay, I will look for that. It might be this new Act Now page that is getting formulated right now, and I don't know if it's gone live yet, but I will look for that.
Okay, wonderful. And the other thing is, we'd love if EDF could take the pledge for the Earth Bill. It might be a little bit vanguard. I don't know how it resonates with you, but it's going to give us the oomph to keep going and inspire our organizations, and it would just be a boost to grassroots activism. And then our push to these really strong things by 2030 will hopefully help create the space for everything else as well. So we just need more of that, the counter lever to the opposition, which is now, I'm told, ramping up. And so that's what the Earth Bill is for, to give us something to fight for, to get arrested for, to call our Congress people about. And I think everything y'all are doing is sort of like, how would you implement these goals in the Earth Bill? So I wasn't planning on pressuring you in public, but I can't help it. I'm desperate and eager to see us.
That's fine.
Okay, all right.
I will look at it, and it may be more expansive than just to let you know, EDF rarely takes positions on policies that we don't have in-house expertise on, or that we don't work on. So
this is
it's more expansive.
So
Yeah,
hopefully,
I'll look at it.
All right, Felice, I sure appreciate it. And all right, everybody. Well, thank you again so much. Take the pledge to find out about Monday's meeting. It'll start Monday, May 3rd, 8 p.m. Eastern time. We're going to meet every Monday night between now and for the next couple months, because we want to try to make this push to get everything in the House version that we possibly can. And obviously the Clean Energy Standard is top of the agenda for that. Everyone, welcome to that. Please tell your friends. Felice, I think you agree, and Sam said it and Keith said it. Everybody's saying that this is a historic moment, an historic opportunity. I really am urging everyone to drop everything that you're doing besides this for a month or so, and imagine how you will feel at July 4th if there's a clean energy standard in the House bill. Just imagine how you will feel after your decades of fighting the fossil fuel companies to put something in law that signals the end of that problem. So that's all I can do today. Begging, pleading, inspiring, hopefully, and we'll see you all on Monday nights, the 3rd, and we're going to get to work. So thank you all again. This is a heck of a journey we're on. As you can see, we've opened the door from the top to the middle to the bottom, and everybody's talking together and working together. So we've already accomplished something great, I feel. We're working as a movement now, it sounds like and feels like. So this is all great progress.
Thank you, Todd.
Thank you all.
Thanks, guys.
Be safe, everyone.
Thanks,
Thank you.
everyone. It was a great meeting.
Thank you, Todd.
Thanks.
Woo!
Bye.
Go team.
Be safe.
Thank you, everybody.